The year is 2003. You just left your house after playing DDR Extreme on your PS2 all day to head to the movie theater. You heard that the arcade there just got a DDR Extreme machine and you're heading there for the night. Fast forward. The year is 2006. You're watching X-Play. A review comes on, voiced by Adam Sessler. It's of a rhythm game you've never seen before, with 7 plastic buttons and a turntable. It looks pretty bad. He calls it a Guitar Hero ripoff and gives it a 1 out of 5. You forget about it. It's 2015. You walk into your favorite local arcade. You chat with the owner for a few and glance over to the corner where the rhythm games are. You see the locals over there in the corner huddled around the machine. The screen is black, displaying an error message. One of them looks over at you and says, "It's over." The story of Programmed World starts not with Programmed World itself, but with a network known as eAmusement. eAmusement, often shortened to EA or eAmuse, is an online network run by Konami to support its Bemani rhythm game series. It allows for the saving of data and unlockable content between games and machines, as well as participation in high scores and other exclusive features for each game. All of this is tied to an eAmusement Pass, a card that works with the card readers attached to their machines. Sega and Taito have their own proprietary online systems as well, but for today we're just focusing on Konami. Almost all of Konami's games today not only support, but require eAmusement to even start, let alone play. Generally speaking, in America, we do not have eAmusement officially. It does exist here, and technically we have access to it in a very kneecapped way. But broadly speaking, we do not have access, and getting access to the main network is impossible. This is because Konami does not license their rhythm games to America, with the exception of DDR semi-recently. The only exception to this rule is Round 1, a Japanese arcade chain that began opening stores in the US. They retain the licensing agreement for EA and Bemani games that their Japanese stores have, so they're able to house Bemani games and have them online with full eAmusement. But technically, those games are running on the Japanese version of eAmusement, and the official American eAmusement only supports DDR at this time. Around the early 2010s, most people in the US had only played DDR since that game was getting imported and bootlegged all over the place, and maybe the US version of Beatmania. Konami very rarely dabbles in releasing rhythm games in the US, especially in arcades. A few of the random CS mixes here and there made it over, but generally speaking, arcades in the US are sparse when it comes to Bemani. So people were chugging along, importing games and running them offline. At that time, even though eAmusement had been around for a while, going as far back as 2DX 9th Mix, they still allowed for offline play. During this time, arcades would do their best to acquire upgrade kits to take their games up a version. Konami originally offered these kits for about $3,000, which came with security dongles, the new game, and cabinet artwork. If you were lucky, you could get new ones from a source in Japan, but most people would just try to find them on Yahoo Japan auctions running the previous version. Around 2011 is where Programmed World comes into play. Programmed World was effectively a shadow network designed to provide an eAmusement equivalent experience to people outside of regions where official eAmusement was available. It was a free network and began offering connections for Beatmania 2DX Sirius, as well as a few other Bemani games at that time. Now, from what I can tell, at this point in the story, there isn't anything inherently wrong with Programmed World. The network code was running to allow for score saving, but as far as I can tell at that time, that was it. Upgrades were still being done through legitimate upgrade kits even if they were purchased secondhand, and no financial transactions were tracked at all on actual eAmusement at this point, so it's not like Konami was missing out on any money. All of that changed, however, in 2012 on Beatmania 2DX20 Tricoro. When Tricoro released, the networked rhythm game scene completely shifted. As of this version, upgrade kits are no longer sent out. Aside from when a machine gets a hardware revision, all updates and upgrades are sent out online now via eAmusement. This was also when all eAmusement-enabled games began requiring a connection to the eAmusement server to even start. This shadow network was now a lifeline for any cabinets running data at Tricoro or newer, because without the connection required to start the game up, you're basically the proud owner of a big paperweight with a black error screen. In addition, starting at Resort Anthem, 2 games prior, Konami was forced to start encrypting their games. They had released support for a service called Pacelli, which is basically a sort of arcade currency you can attach to your eAmusement pass to pay for rounds. Basically, you can go on Konami's site and buy Pacelli to pay for your rhythm gameplays. Since the games were now handling support for a financial transaction, Konami couldn't leave their game data unencrypted. Programmed World tried and failed to get the encrypted games running on their service, so they were left no choice but to begin distributing decrypted, cracked versions of the game across the network. Now, you can argue 100% that this is a terrible idea. This is blatant and unapologetic copyright infringement. That said, they had a few reasons for doing this. First off, the service would effectively become obsolete if they didn't do this. People always want to play on new data, and if it went unsupported, not only would those games not be able to start under conventional means, but it would also mean that there was no reason for the service to even exist anymore. The second reason is that Konami will never sell America these games. There's something to understand about Konami, Bemani Games, and the US, especially if you're a private owner or a small business. If you came to Konami with all the money in the world, they would not sell you their machines. For whatever reason you can think of, they won't do it. Even if you manage to import a machine, getting your home or small business arcades on official eAmusement is impossible. You need special networking equipment that Konami will not sell you. So while yes, this whole situation with Programmed World was blatantly not legal, fans of these games had no choice but to take the risk if they wanted to play the games they love. During Tricoro, Programmed World was able to simultaneously release updates as they came out in Japan, for a brief time letting America run in parallel to Japan's network experience with events and scoreboards. This network and current data created new interest in Bemani games in the US and sparked community growth. This ran along semi-smoothly up until March 5th, 2015. On March 5th, 2015, Konami issued a cease and desist against Programmed World for illegally distributing software they didn't own the rights to. It was hardly an eventful situation. The Programmed World devs had agreed at the start that if this had happened, they wouldn't take action and simply fold to the request. It's not like they had any legal ground to stand on anyway. On March 8th, 2015, Programmed World was shut down forever, leaving machines everywhere on a connection error screen. The gray market nature of this whole thing means a lot of the machine owners would be left in the dark. It was basically agreed upon at this point that running an emulated eAmusement network was going to be impossible while official eAmusement was active. Shadow networks also circumvent the arcade licensing scheme, which is a way Konami makes money off of machines running on their network. That said, the issue remained. There was no way to purchase or run these games officially in the US. A massive community left in the dark as their network keeping their community alive vanished right before their eyes. A lot of machines were left with no way to access their games. Any machines that had upgraded to Programmed World data were now left without a network connection and no way to start. So they were either forced to revert to an old version not requiring an internet connection or take their game down for good. At the time this happened, there were exactly two hopes in the American Bemani community for how they could survive. Since it's been about 6 years since this happened, we can take a look and see how those hopes have played out. The first hope was that of the creation of international eAmusement. This had been heavily rumored around this time, a version of eAmusement that could be used outside of Japan and the other supported Asian regions. It would have been a good explanation for the timing of the cease and desist, getting rid of an unofficial shadow network to make room for the official one. However, this never really materialized. The US got official eAmusement for DDR, but it is yet to expand to any other games in the Bemani series and is only available in a select handful of Dave & Buster's locations. The other hope for eAmusement in the US was that of Round 1. Not so much a hope of international eAmusement, so to speak, but official access to the standard Japanese eAmusement. Round 1 arcades retain the licensing agreements that their Japanese counterparts have, so they're able to run Bemani games online on official Japanese eAmusement. This allows for basically all features barring any Pacelli-specific modes, which is honestly a story for another day, and allows US players to stay current with Bemani games as they're updated and released. That said, Round 1 is hardly an elegant solution due to the fact that they are sparsely spread out over the US. The US is, obviously, a very large country, and even though there are quite a few Round 1 locations, a lot of players are still 5+ hours away from the closest one, just out of reach from the Bemani games they love. Local communities have definitely popped up and maintained where Round 1 locations are, but if you aren't close to one, basically nothing has changed and you have no access to these games. While Programmed World dying was, at the time, basically a start of another dark age of rhythm games in the US, preceded only by the Plastic Instrument Games crash, this absolute dark period has arguably passed due to Round 1 and Dave & Buster's sparingly supporting eAmusement where they're available. Large parts of the US still remain without official e-amusement support and are forced to look into alternate methods or simulators if they want a chance to play their favorite rhythm games. It may be better than it was 5 years ago, but Programmed World at the time undoubtedly helped the rhythm game community both survive and thrive in the US and other regions. While its existence was bound to be short-lived, the impact it had on the Western Bemani community cannot be understated, and it is a shame Konami cannot see that there is a wealth of passionate players begging every day for easier access to the games we love. Thanks for watching. Check out my Twitter and my Twitch. Links are in the description below. You can also check out my Patreon if you want to support my content. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.